I think we really upped the banter quotient today.
Krishna is smiling because I think he's taking a lot of this personally.
It's impossible for anyone to find a role that matches 100% to what they are very good at or what they like.
It's important to trust the decision that you make and just stick with it for a while.
Then everyone has a skill inside them, right? There is an onion, you have to keep peeling till you find the core.
தலைவர் said this
Don't
20
forget
years
to like.
ago. உனக்குள்ளே ஒரு சக்தி இருக்கு அதை உசுப்பிட வழிபாரு.
I really know what I don't want to do or what I don't like, and I will keep that off the list no matter what.
Trusting the system and like doing that grind for a couple of years and then slowly getting specific about what you want.
It's always going to be a mix of things you like, things you don't like, things you're good at, things you're not good at.
Because I don't want to build a skill that doesn't pay. Like, is it worth doing that?
The last thing you want to be is a computer science engineer by degree who cannot write code.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of OK Boomer. I have Alien Ashwin, Body Soda, and now a regular second episode in a row, Sanjeev NC. Hey gentlemen.
Hello.
Right,
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, Sanjeev, this is a very professional show, so let's go with hey folks, hey gentlemen. Let's avoid. It's okay. Sanjeev is new to the scene. Anyway, so we are here to discuss another very useful topic, and I want to thank a lot of listeners who have been very kind enough to walk up to us in person, mostly me or Body when we are at work, to say how they found a lot of what we spoke very useful and how we consistently go after controversial topics, uncomfortable discussions, but that need to be held. So thank you for that. That said, what we are going to discuss today is, hey, I'm at a place where I know I'm good at something. I seem to have a mix of 2 or 3 skill set. How do I turn that into a career? Or if you want to dig one level deeper, what is a specific role that I go after in a company? And given our particular expertise and our background, like most episodes will be sticking to tech or perhaps SaaS even in general. And even when you get that specific, this is still broad, right? I know it's a cliche, but SaaS is indeed an ocean. So that's what we are going to talk about. And having Sanjeev really helps because he's one of those people who has a very unique skill set, and he literally went after and created a category for himself, turned a fun project or fun hobby rather into a career. So it's going to be really fun with him in the house. Ashwin, on to you.
Okay, I think we'll save best for the last, so I'll start first. See, one thing I want to start off in, like, it's a really interesting topic. I wish like I had something like this to listen to when I've switched teams and roles multiple times in my professional life in the first 10 years. So it's going to be a little insightful, and a couple of folks who we have here have switched fields, switched companies, created categories like Bob mentioned. I'll start off with one thing, maybe that I have a thumb rule of, and then we'll go on from there. One thing I usually do in deciding my career choices for the next thing is I really know what I don't want to do or what I don't like, and I will keep that off the list no matter what. Like, I don't even want to take chance or take an experiment. This is my own personal thing. And to give an example, I know I really can't do marketing. Like I know if I do, I might not do it well, or it's just not my interest. I cannot, like I used to tell someone that if you ask me to make a PPT and show that to save my life, I will still do a very horrible job at it. That's who I am as a person. So I'm little like curious when it comes to like figuring out what the problem is or taking out insightful information or understanding a business. So that's the part that makes me interested in the job or like kind of drives me. I can't do marketing campaigns. I cannot create creative stuff. I cannot come up with things to do. So in all the roles that I've done, a couple of things that I've done and switched teams and did experiments around things, I've always leaned on people who are good at it. Like that's a lot of what me and Sanjeev also collaborated in the early days on. Uh, I just can't do. So I go for help and get it done from them. So I know I cannot make a career out of those. So even when those were options to me at some point, I just stayed away from it. So my thing here to start off with as the first thing is just know what you would hate doing as a career, right? And just try and not build things on top of, because one thing with career is it always compounds, right? So you learn and then you build something on top of that. So you take that learning and it'll help you at some point in time in whatever shape or form of career you're in. So maybe basics will help in every field, but going even little further on things that you don't see yourself as a professional or you hate doing or you don't like, it's just not worth experimenting or building a career in that. Like even if it's high paying, it's just not worth it. What do you want to say, buddy?
No consultants were harmed in the making of this monologue.
Like, I would say like the three catchphrases of The Rock is what you should follow, which is know your role, shut your mouth, and just bring it. Like, understand your strengths, don't whine or complain, and bring your best to work. Like, these are the three actionable points that anyone can do. Like, I'll go one level above. So, I would say internally you need to have a priority matrix, right? So you look at what is important to you. Like there are so many aspects of a role that people need to consider, right? Like I would look at it as, hey, I know my strengths are XYZ. I know my weaknesses are ABC. But what does the role entail? Does the role entail me doing like something in XYZ a lot? Or does it entail me doing something in ABC a lot? Like what is the trade-off, right? Like there has to be a, like it's impossible for anyone to find a role that matches 100% to what they are very good at or what they like doing, right? Like it's always going to be a mix of things you like, things you don't like, things you're good at, things you're not good at. It's more on you to prioritize. Do you want to do something you like more than do you want to do something you're good at? And conversely, do you want to avoid doing something you don't like or do you want to avoid something you're bad at? And then figure out of the options available to you which has the best composition that is favorable to you, right? Like it could be stuff that in your role you may like, let's say take recruiting for example, right? Like I probably like talking to people, interacting with people, but that doesn't mean I like calling people up and following up with them. So recruiting involves a lot of calling candidates, talking to them, understanding, and giving them bad news also, saying that they rejected. So that is probably one aspect of recruiting that I personally don't like, but that doesn't mean that is going to be 100% of my job, right? So do I care enough about how much of it I like versus don't like? How much of it am I good at, bad at? So figure out that what works for you. That priority order really matters, and then sort it in a way that makes sense for you. That's what I would say should be your approach in figuring out what should be the career for the skill set that you have.
So I'm just thinking back to my early stages, right? How did I approach this? And I think the honest answer is that I had no idea, neither about my skill set nor about the role. I just went with what was offered to me. I think a lot of things has changed. Maybe people graduating from college have a better idea of like what is out there, but I still would defer to that, right? When in your early stages, when you're thinking about skill sets or roles, just be aware that you don't have a lot of idea about it actually, because you've never worked in a company. So if you're in early stage of your career and if you've not worked in a company at all, you just trust what comes your way and do your job well there, at least for a few years, before you even realize what your skill sets are and you realize what roles are out there. Like for example, when I joined Capgemini right out of college, I was given a customer support role and I had no idea what customer support was apart from the stigma that was associated with it. So I obviously resisted. I'm like, no, I don't want to be a support rep. I want to be a developer and all that. But in hindsight, I'm glad that I started my career there because it taught me a lot that I still carry to this day, right? So the truth is, you don't know a lot. You make a lot of assumptions early in your career, both about your skill sets and about the roles that the companies offer. maybe you're thinking because you run a blog, you think you can be a good marketer, and you join a team as a marketer, you realize that those two are completely different things.
I
So
told
in
that in
early stages,
confidence, NC. You didn't have to drag me through
because
the mud like that.
I had a blog as well. I used to write Tamil movie reviews, and there had no correlation with what a marketer is supposed to do and what more so in B2B, right? So in early stages, the way to look at things is just trust what comes your way. Go with gut. Maybe if you have people that you trust, ask them for advice. But once you have a sense, maybe after like in that 7 to 10 year mark where you're pretty confident about your skill sets, I think that's when you can be a little bit more specific about the roles that you want to pick. You can start rejecting, saying that I am like, for example, I think when you're in college, you can make two decisions. You can say, I can either be in tech or I can be in non tech. So, by that I mean, I have a programming muscle that I can do hardcore programming stuff. So, that's one path that you can decide. Or, no, I want to be on the either the talking or the writing or the non tech. I think that is a decision that you can take early in your career. But apart from that, the more specific the role and skill sets to pick, you have to spend a few years in the workforce.
Do we think there is a very superficial understanding of what I like, what I'm good at? What for you saying like 7 to 10 years to figure out your skill set? It's a mind-boggling amount of time for anybody entering the workplace in 2024.
I think it
Or
takes that time
the next
for
generation that
it takes that time for someone to know themselves. But I think 7 to 10 years is an ideal time to know completely, right? Like, what do you want to be when you're 50? Like, what do you want to end your career with? That's the pinnacle of your own personal career, right? So it takes, I think, after that 7 to 10 year mark, lesson, you would have a good idea of where you would want to be, right? But in that early years, you would never know. Like you would want to be an entrepreneur, or you would want to end as a CRO, or you might not like both. You would want to do marketing, so you want to, hey, I am good as a CMO, but I cannot handle finance, right? Or I cannot do budgeting. So a good CEO needs to also know that, right, to run a company. So you would know what you pretty much want to end with, I think, at that point, and you would also know your passion, right? I think at that point, it could be if you're spent your career in the same industry, then I think that's where you would have to make up your mind. Do you want to stay in the same industry, or are you passionate about the role so that you can do that same role in any industry? Because the same finance in SaaS could be very different from finance in healthcare, right? Like, just because you're so good at finance in SaaS doesn't mean you will just kill finance anywhere. So if you have spent
I
considerable
think
amount of
Ashwin
time in
killed
one
it with that
industry,
point. It was so good he gave himself a thumbs up for saying that.
that wasn't intentional. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is, so if you aren't sure about the industry you're in, like, few people will have passion towards an industry as well, right? More than also the personal choices. Someone would be very interested in construction, say, or architecture, like things like that. You still have every type of role to do in that industry, right? So you can still, whatever you're good at and what aligns with your passions, like even if it is, say, running marketing like channels, like even YouTube channels or media or whatever it is, every industry has its own sub work of like specializations that you will be good at. And everything is very different in different industries. So either experiment early on in career, or you just know one industry well enough that it'll be a little hard to switch later. There's one thumbs up from Sanjeev as well for that. But yeah, that 7 to 10 year is more of, I think you would get good amount of industry knowledge and a lot of understanding about yourself. But I'm with what Sanjeev said. Like, early on, a lot of uh, things for a lot of people will be chances, and you will be just
Yeah.
thrown at those chances. It won't be a conscious choice of career. Like, even for me, sales wasn't a choice. Like, it was a chance. Like, that was the only thing that was available in Freshworks, so I just took it. But I just made a career out of it, right? So you would never know what will come your way.
And the harmful part about that is you think you know. So that's the problem. So you think like if when you talk to early stage career, right, they would talk with so much conviction. Like know the data analysis is my thing. Like I really want to be a data analyst. Like they would just pick one or two things and they would be like, I know exactly what I want. And that was me, right? When I joined Freshworks as a pre-sales, 3 months I did a little bit of coding and I went up to a manager and said, I want to be a developer. Like I want to move teams. I'm going to be a developer. I even spoke to someone in the team and said, I'm going to move to your team. I'm glad that I had some sense that I didn't go through with that decision, because at that time you think that you can do a lot and you are so confident with yourself. I think as you grow older and as you get more experience, you know to doubt yourself. You know that you don't know everything. But early in your career, you think that you know everything. So what tends to happen is you either be unhappy in your current role, thinking that some other role is better for you, and thinking that if you get that opportunity, you're going to do much better, or you're with so much conviction in your current role that you're blind to everything, anything else that comes your way. Both of it is harmful, but just trusting the system and like doing that grind for a couple of years and then slowly getting specific about what you want, rather than just demanding outright saying that, "No, I will only do this role or I will not do that role," early on can be harmful. There's a thumbs down from us.
I don't know.
So maybe this
I
can read
don't.
minds.
I don't know what this phone is recognizing. I
I
don't know
think
if
your
it's reading my
advice was
mind.
too boomery.
I don't know how a device can read my mind. No, but one thing, Sanjeev. So, like, actually, what you're saying for the first part, I agree. But on the part that you said you cannot reject choices, right? That's where, like, my personal take would be to reject something that you know for sure that you don't like. Like, I think that understanding might take time for you to know.
True.
Like, but if you know that you are not going to like something, that, and I have applied this personally, so that's why I'm sharing it here. I know I don't like something, and that's for sure. Like I said, like I cannot do that job to save my life, right? So if that's the case, I will reject. I don't even want to
Yeah.
experiment.
See, I think there's like two places why you would reject a role, right? For example, like the reason I said the customer support example is the whole customer support role had a lot of like bias against it. Like at least when we were starting our career, right? So if someone is using that as a reason to reject it, is the problem. So that's one thing that I'm talking about. The second part is, let's say you're thinking that, okay, I cannot do marketing because I can't write. And when you don't understand marketing fully, you would have such notions, right? Where you're saying, oh, I'm not going to be a marketer because I'm not an extrovert, or I can't talk to people, I can't write. But then once you get into marketing, you know that there's much more to marketing than what you thought marketing was. So that's the area that I'm talking about. When you don't have an awareness and you reject a concept that you think is the concept, but when in reality it could be much more.
Yeah, makes
Okay,
sense.
okay.
Hey, since I have like such a eclectic group, Ashwin went from sales to CS, and Body went from marketing to HR, and of course, Sanjeev went from having a
Everywhere to
full-time job
everywhere.
to whatever he's doing, from pre-sales to product management. So you have done that pivot in your careers because at some point you felt whatever you thought your skill set was, that was not the case. How did you go about making that decision?
Who's going to start?
I'll go.
I can probably, yeah, go ahead, Sanjay.
Oh, okay. So for me, it was not a conscious forward thinking decision. So it so happened that I spent 2 years in support, 2 years in sales, 2 years in product marketing, 2 years in product management. It sounds so planned out, but it definitely wasn't. At every time when I was in a different role, for example, when I was in support, I would already be interested in sales. When I was in pre-sales, I was already writing blogs, and when I was in product marketing, I was already like troubling product managers with ideas, and I would send like huge emails to people saying that you should implement this product. So I always had some inclination of the next role that I would go in, but then it was not because that I wanted to be a product marketer that I started writing blogs. I just wrote blogs because I wanted to write. So in some sense you start showing those signs when you want to like exhibit those skills. You're naturally drawn to it, but it also has something to do with your personal preference, right? Like I get bored very easily. I like to jump between things. So it was always like everything would interest me at some point. Like right now, I'm trying to learn how to code. It's the only thing that I haven't done. So that is something that just automatically attracts. So it is not a planned decision, but you just keep looking out for things that interest you and just naturally move towards that.
Okay, okay. I think pretty much on the same school of thought. For me, just for context, I've moved twice in sales, and then I've moved once or twice in customer success. And from sales to customer success was like a big pivot, but still the switch inside sales was also considering career switching and skill set and all of that, and like what I personally want to do. A couple of things I kind of know about myself when I made these choices, right? One is I always wanted to be in a customer facing role. That was one core, like how I initially said things that I don't want to do. I also have a set of things I do want to do, right? That, and one of those where like I cannot be an internal team like analyst or like internal program. I just didn't want to do that. So I wanted a customer facing role, which I was pretty clear with. So that filters my choices. I know I can take 50% of the roles in the company out when I have this filter, right? So now inside that, again, I have to align my skills, what I like doing versus what I don't like doing, and all of that. So one of the things that I know about myself, or I understood in that early stage, was when things get little structured, or when you have a good plan in place to do things, it gets little boring. Right? The initial couple of roles that I did, environment around me was always chaotic. Like you should always figure out what you want to do. You have to like there are problems and you have to find solutions. And it will be chaotic. Things will not be thrown to you. There is no systems, tools, process in place, right? So when things got more stable, more structured, I felt like I need to be somewhere else. So every time I switched roles, I looked out for things for an environment that is more chaotic. So when I did almost 5, 6 years in sales, the customer success switch was little, I would say, coincidental with like the person who I worked with before was already there. So it gave me a comfort zone to move and try a new thing because I also know that if I fail there, uh, like the person who was hiring me knew me as a person, right? Like he'll give me chances, tries, because he knows me as a person that I'll keep trying. So that comfort zone with people was there. Team was new. I know the environment is going to be chaotic. It was a very similar thing to previous things I did before, right? It was chaotic. You will have to kind of make things and build things. It was very similar, I would say, age of the team structure there. So I went and just joined it. Like environment around me, people around me were good. I know skill set is something new, which the basic filters fit. I just have to complement with few things. So it just worked out, right? Like there's just 50% chance that it couldn't have worked out. But then I would have switched for another customer facing role, like if that didn't work out, right? That was the thing. All the filters will not meet at every switch you might consider. And early on in career, you will have a lot of choices. So you will have to experiment for you to know if it works or no. Not all experiments will work. That's why it's called an experiment. But then just see what satisfies most of your filter, what that the balance that body spoke, right? Like there are few things that will be uncomfortable, but there are few things that are non-negotiable. You will have to strike a balance. There are few things that I didn't want, but I still had to go with it. Things like I moved from a day work timing to a night shift because everything else fit, and this was the only thing that initially I had it as a non-negotiable, but then I said like we'll give it a shot because this was the only thing that everything else fits, right? Between choosing a skill set and choosing a time zone, I would always choose skill set because that's long-term benefit. I can time zone I can always change in 1 or 2 years, 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
So that was my line of thinking when I moved from sales to customer success. And even in customer success, I switched once or twice, and even in sales, I switched once or twice. Everything will follow the same pattern. Like I don't think a lot of this was planned. Like Sanjeev said, for me, it just happened with these filters just matched. But now when I retrospect and think, like every switch had these common things for me that just worked out.
Yeah, usually you find out more in retrospect. And I think Ashwin had looks like Ashwin had a lot of clarity early on in his career as well. I certainly didn't. A lot of my decisions were very emotional. Like I understand the concept of filters that he's talking about now, but I don't think I did that back then. I'm
Yeah.
glad it turned out the way it did. I'm so glad it turned out the way it did, but it was very emotional and just making, like, it was not logical at all. And I think it's okay. Again, the point that I want to stress is our education system doesn't prepare us to make these decisions, especially in the Indian context. I mean, I don't know how it is abroad, but we are never taught to make these kind of decisions in ambiguity. So that's why it's important to trust the decision that you make and just stick with it for a while. Like, don't, if you keep second guessing everything, every other role and every other skill set is going to look ludicrous, that
True.
you think that you'll do better there, but it's not the case. And Krishna is smiling because I think he's taking a lot of this personally.
I think this whole channel is everybody advising Krisbot and Krisbot sharing it with everyone. That's
Hey,
but
while I have you here, I want to double click on something Ashwin said at the beginning of his long monologue about how once the chaos settles down, where there is organized structure, the work automatically becomes boring. Uh, Almost like honeymoon period. If you look at relationships and all, or new job, the same is true for the new role as well.
we
How
know
do
when
you
you're
avoid
single,
that
but
trap? Because that's where I feel. Okay, stay tuned for our relationship podcast that's coming down the road. Let's
See,
not
this,
jump the
this is the
gun.
thing. Like, I like the confidence in which he assumed and just made that statement. Right? Just like how early stage career people would do.
yeah,
Like,
you
marketing is for writers. Like, customer support is so boring. Like, you would be so confident, but you've never ever stepped into a company at all.
the fact that you're so confident and you're sharing this like in public domain says that
Is
you're
this a
single.
dig at my podcasting discipline or my relationship status? I still don't understand.
Because me and
Anyway,
Sanjeev are married, when we say things like this and it gets shared, I don't think we have the confidence to say things like this in the first place.
anyway,
But yeah,
I think we really upped the banter quotient today. This is like when the interstellar fancy robo, gets too sassy and our guy Matthew McConaughey, he
yeah.
goes and
Usually Shankar will be on the receiving end of our banter. Today you are. That's the only difference.
maybe. Anyway, back to the
But yeah,
point.
go for it.
Boring work. Yeah. When things get boring, that's when this agitation to start bothering the PMs, wanting to learn coding. A lot of that comes from. How do you avoid that trap? Or maybe it's a signal, right? You don't know if it's a trap or signal. Both could be equally true. Body, you're on mute.
Coming to this boring work part, I want to add one thing, right? Like, if I'll break it into two. So for people early in their career, I'll come to it second. But for people who've done multiple roles or who've done different kinds of work in probably the same role, right? Like, they would be aware of what the work entails, and for them, I think the choice would naturally come down to how do I optimize for doing something where I get happiness out of what I do, and whatever boring work there is as minimal as possible. Like, it's impossible to avoid a role that has boring work, right? Like, every role has some work that you may not like, that you may not enjoy, that can be considered as boring. But at the end of the day, you need to understand what is it that you can put up with, right? Like, more than what you like, what is it that you can live with, and up to what extent. So optimizing for that will really help. The second thing, which is talking to people early in their career, right? Like, there are 2-3 things that I just want to cover here, because a lot of people talk about what they want to do, and that is a very grass is greener on the other side syndrome, right? Like, you may be in a role where you may not like what you're doing, you may think it is boring, it may be considered inferior, all that is fine. the minute you start thinking that, something else is good or something else is better, unless you go and do it, you don't know what aspects of that role are bad, right? Like nothing is objectively good or objectively bad. Everything is subjective, and everything is like, it's like yin and yang, right? Like there is good to bad, there is bad to good. So there are parts of it which will be bad. Unless you go do it, you will not know it. So uh, give yourself the time and space to understand what you like, understand what works or doesn't work, right? And that needs time. Like you can't do something for 1 day or 2 days or 1 week or 1 month. Like it will take a year to 2 years minimum to figure out if that role is right for you, right? Like I would say bare minimum 1 year, ideal is 2 years, because different people work at different speeds and styles. Like, and it also depends on the pace of the company. Like if you're in a very big company, things may not move fast. So that, I think, is the single most important thing for anyone. Give yourself time to understand whether you like something or not. And if you want to look at your career, it is basically the rest of your life. So it's 1 year in the rest of your life is going to be very insignificant when you look at it at the larger scale of things.
Okay. I know we are almost at 30 minutes here. Like towards the, I, I want to cover one important thing, and I think what we work for, right? Again, building a career for optimizing money. Like I don't think we've ever covered this till now. All of us are talking about skill set, but it more like, consider this more like a question, right? Because I don't have my own personal thoughts. I haven't gathered my thoughts yet, but this question just came to my mind when Body was saying this. Do you build skill set that you are uninterested in because there is money there, or do you think you can work on pretty much anything and earn in the top 1%? Like, how do I balance this? I honestly don't know, but because I don't want to build a skill that doesn't pay. Like, is it worth doing that? Like, basically, that's my ultimate question. Like, what do you guys think?
I will take this, or at least I'll briefly touch on this and let one of Sanjeev or Body take over. I
Is
see
that
there are
because
two
you're going to
types.
go for a skill that is not going to pay? Is it because you're going to study a skill that doesn't
Yeah,
pay?
I think by studying he means my hunger for knowledge. Anyway, so there are two types of people that I see. One is somebody who's really passionate about things, somebody who's tinkering with side projects, or Sanjeev and myself being very good examples, right? Like long before we started doing what we do more seriously, we had been doing things on the side. On some level, you have an idea of, hey, this is what I want to go after. This is something I'm really good at, and it seems like the market values what I bring to the table, and I will enjoy doing this. Like it's that ikigai intersection, right? People who know that, they eventually just, even whether there is money or not, whether the early years are a slog or not, they just go and figure that out. They put in the hard yards. People like who may not feel so strongly about a particular discipline, which is absolutely fine, right? They are a lot more open to experimenting, and they might optimize for a career with a significantly higher pay in the early years, like consulting in general, or product management. With all due respect, in SaaS are very good examples of that. People may not be
Any
particularly
job
passionate about
title
it,
that
but
has the word strategy in it.
we have a couple of friends and potential ports whose job title have strategy in it. So for the interest of the podcast, I can't plus one to what you said, but that's my take on that.
For all those strategy people, Body's handle will be tagged. You can directly talk to him. But yeah, what do you think, Sanjeev?
For me, it might sound idealistic when I say this, but for me, the money has always been an outcome, but it's been an important outcome. So I won't say that like it's the passion and all that, but chasing that money has never worked for me. But I've somehow ended up in places which is like which can give money. For example, product management. When I wanted to be a product manager, I didn't know that it was one of the high paying jobs. So this happened when I was in pre-sales, where I genuinely liked the idea of coming up with solutions for product problems. it so happens that it is one of the high paying jobs. And right now, let's say making software with micro SaaS is supposed to be paying really well. Like I see people living in Bali and making thousands of dollars every month. So it just so happens that when you operate in software and you operate in SaaS, most things are high paying. So if you follow your passion in that area, I think you would end up in a good place monetarily versus, let's say, if you choose the same passion elsewhere. So I know for a fact that like the entertainment industry doesn't pay really well. Like you work so much more, you work early mornings till late nights, and you take home something that is very very hard to manage. So if you're lucky enough to be working in SaaS, I think broadly you are in the right place. It doesn't matter if you're in product tech or like marketing or whatever. If you just go down that path, you will do relatively fine. So you don't necessarily have to optimize so much for money, but obviously you that is something that should be in the site.
I can probably speak on the other side of it, right? Like the what I studied and the industry that I could have gone into was like the VFX, like the animation industry, right? It is known for heavily underpaying and overworking people in it. Like that was a choice that I made that I didn't want to go into. I thought I'll probably venture into it at a later point in my career. I ended up accidentally finding a role in marketing, but between marketing and HR, it was a conscious choice. Like I chose to move out of marketing into HR, knowing fully well that marketing as a job pays relatively higher than HR. Like that is fact. But I still had the confidence in me that I could still be in the top 1% of whatever I do. Right? Like not at an average level, if you look at it, marketing does pay higher than HR. But I'm confident that I will be paid more than people like I know or like myself, right? Like I'm not comparing myself with others. Like if I were in marketing, if I were in HR, I know where I would stand. So I optimize for what I'm good at while taking into consideration the monetary aspects of it.
Okay. I think makes sense. I just want to share one last thing before we kind of close. Now that both of you spoke, I gathered my thoughts for the same question. I think where it comes to is like I'm totally on the side of it. Don't chase money, but it might not be a choice for a lot of people. Like we are a little privileged. Like anyone who says that might be a little privileged, right? So we totally acknowledge that. But the intent behind why I asked that question is it something that I'm not good at. If that's the role or skill set that's paying more and I need that money, like should I build this? Should I work on building that skill set, or should I just ignore and focus on like what I am good at and make that better? Right? That's like I think Body answered that beautifully. Like you would want to work on things that you are good at as a skill set and try to comparatively be better. I think what we can kind of summarize or like put together in
I
this
can
whole thing
add
is like any
one more
skill set
point to
is
that.
high paying skill set. Yeah, go for it.
Like this is a simple conundrum that most people have in college, right? Like a lot of people who choose computer science, including me, like people choose computer science because it's probably one of the higher paying departments. But at the end of the day, if you're not good at coding, if you're not interested at coding, you will become unemployable. Like the last thing you want to be is a computer science engineer by degree who cannot write code, right? So I would say give yourself a timer, right? Like the timer should be again dependent on so many factors, dependent on your privilege, dependent on what is important, what is the leeway that you have, all of that. So as long as you have a fixed time in mind, make sure you're aiming to get better at it. But if you figure out that it is not working out, like if you see no hope in becoming better at whatever you've chosen, it is completely okay to skip, as in to give up on that and try something that you may be good at, right? Like I didn't choose to do computer science coding again from school to college. It was a conscious choice. I really liked coding, I enjoyed coding, I wanted to be a graphic design or a video game developer. Like I wanted to write code that built video games, but also wanted to add like the artistic side of it. But then when I realized that it is not something that I like doing, I chose to move out of it, right? Like that was the time window that I had for myself. And I think that is something that everyone should be uh, cognizant of and try to not get into this rabbit hole of trying to do something infinitely looking for an outcome when it may not be there.
True. Makes sense. Yeah, I think like in summary, I'll kind of rephrase it or say it in a better way. What I'm still gathering those thoughts, right? When you focus on a skill set, like don't ever look at how much it's gonna pay, or like I think that should be a secondary question, or it's an outcome, like Sanjeev said. Um, we can relate to see there are doctors, like you might think doctors are highly paid. Like, that's an assumption that everybody will have. Doctors and lawyers are for generations are high paying jobs, a little ambitious to get. But there are world class doctors who make or who think of that as a craft, and like that's where we should be, right? There are also doctors who are next door, like they are not. I don't think they would even get back the money that they would have spent on studying the profession, right? So I don't think choosing a skill set or choosing a career matters, but what matters is how well are you compared to the rest of the world. Any career you choose, it could be anything, like whatever you find, someone who's just earning very less to even next door. But if you be that 1 percentile in the world in that profession, you would get that money back. Like it's an outcome that you will get. Focus on what you like and prioritize what you have interests in, and what you would want to build, and you would be successful for sure. And I think with that we are pretty much at time. Thanks for watching, and yeah, hope everybody has some insight. And if anyone has switched careers in your life with any other methodology that you used or any other examples, feel free to share, like in comments or anytime you chat with either one of us. Thank you
I
again,
think
and
one
body.
last.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is one of my favorite movies. So plug in for walk water cutting. Like Shiva says in the movie to Lake Washington, everyone has a skill inside them, right? You have to. It's like there is an onion. You have to keep peeling till you find the core. So understand your core and
Bro,
figure out what your skill is.
தலைவர் said this
Don't
20
forget
years
to
ago.
like.
உனக்குள்ளே ஒரு சக்தி இருக்கு, அதை உசுப்பிட வழி பாரு.
அது வந்து it makes more sense in walk water cutting. So please watch that movie and don't forget to like, share, and surprise.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks. Take care. Bye bye.